I'm Sheldon Lettich, and I co-wrote the screenplay for Lionheart and directed it also. It's a story that Jean-Claude came up with by himself. He invented all of this stuff. The guy who's the Foreign Legion deserter, the friend who becomes his so-called manager, the sister-in-law, all of that. Jean-Claude came up with all of that.
Lionheart was conceived, I thought about what I did. I came from Belgium to America without anything, without just a passport, not knowing the language. And I did have a rough life in Belgium in the past. So I said to myself, what about a brother in trouble, me and the Foreign Legion, so we have some action out there, because the Foreign Legion are people who are in jail because they've done something very bad. Some are innocent and they go sentenced to death, or you go to the Foreign Legion. So I'm in the Foreign Legion. I'm going to escape to help my brother.
Jean-Claude had this idea. It's called Wrong Bet. He gave me the bare bones outlines of it. And then I started coming up with some ideas of my own. What if the person who's the head of this fight circuit is a woman? Oh, great idea. Yeah, let's make her a woman. And she's really rich, and she's in New York City, and they start in New York City, and then they go to California. So we started coming up with all this stuff.
So it was kind of my story in a sense. I came from Belgium to LA. I did have a rough life, so metaphor, Foreign Legion. And I came here to survive. I fought. And I fought here too to survive before I became famous. So that was the concept of Lionheart. And that's why it felt so real and so painful and good drama.
Your brother is not my problem. Or yours anymore. You gave up your family when you joined the Legion.
I never gave up my family. Never.
The story of the motion picture Lionheart really is a one-man struggle against tremendous odds and loyalty. Loyalty to your family and to yourself. And that's a issue that is a big issue with people who like martial arts films. They're heavily into patriotism, family, those sorts of things, those kind of commitments, personal commitments and honor mean a lot. And this had to do with honor all the way through. All the different characters in the picture face at some point their own judgment of their honor.
So this is the story that he pitched to Sunil Shah, which he called Wrong Bet. Because basically the climactic moment is when Joshua says, hey, I bet against you, and then Leon says, wrong bet.
The whole bet's on Attila. Wrong bet.
That was actually the title in a number of countries. I know in Australia it was called Wrong Bet. I think in Belgium it was called Wrong Bet.
They call the movie Full Contact in Paris, AWOL in England, Lionheart in America. Why? I don't know. And some people, they extend the cut and everything because those producers, when they sold the movie, sometimes some territories, they have different tastes than other territories. And they want one extra explosion, for example, on the escape. The Jeep, they want an explosion, so we'll produce, we have it, make them happy. So sometimes you have to be flexible with the buyers because they know their publics in their own countries.
Part of the struggle with getting a picture marketed properly comes from what is the title of the picture. And the big issue, of course, originally was Wrong Bet, where the helper bets against our hero. Wrong bet. Okay. But then you begin talking about things like, oh, the critics will have a good time with that. If you go to see this movie, it's definitely the wrong bet, right? And so on and so forth. That was part of it, not all of it. And so the picture title changed and changed and changed until the discussion was it really Lionheart. And the reason that we could do Lionheart is the permission was granted to Universal from Warner Brothers that they could use that title for this picture. And it was a studio friend-to-friend thing, and it's a great title. And so that was incorporated in the film, and that was settled prior to the production because he had a tattoo and various things that made him Lionheart. That's how that came about. But internationally, it was known by many other titles. So tracking the potential gross is very tricky, and it's much more than you would suspect. It was Leon the Street Fighter in France, Wrong Bet in some countries, and Lionheart for most of the world.
Jean-Claude had become kind of a minor sensation because of Bloodsport. First time I met him, really, was on the phone. He called me from Hong Kong while he was working on Bloodsport. Hey, we're having some problems here. The producer's changing the script. We talked for a while. There wasn't much we could do about that. However, we decided, when you're back in LA, come by and see me. So we did, and we became fast friends after that.
I met Sheldon, believe it or not, on the phone, calling from the roof of Victoria apartment in Hong Kong. At that time I was able to go on the roof of the Victoria with the harbor at night, and I talked to Sheldon, and at that time Sheldon was doing a rewrite for Rambo 2 or 3, I believe, and we talked, and we met later, and I came back. Bloodsport was not well accepted, and when I saw Bloodsport for the first time, I was completely depressed. I talked to Menahem Golan, Bloodsport, and I met Sheldon, and we did go together.
So I had written this French Foreign Legion script for Sylvester Stallone's company, and Jean-Claude, he and I had, this was after Bloodsport, so we were friends at the time. And he would even consult with me and help me with, especially with some of the swear words that we needed in French. Stallone ended up not making that movie. We actually had a bit of a disagreement as to what direction to take with the French Foreign Legion movie, because I wanted it to take place in the classic French Foreign Legion period, like in the 1920s, turn of the century. And Stallone wanted to do it present day. So I did write a present-day version for him. Ironically, years later, I wrote a classic French Foreign Legion movie with Jean-Claude Van Damme, which was called Legionnaire. So I was really steeped in some of this lore about the French Foreign Legion, and that's why I felt, let's have Leon be in the French Foreign Legion, then we can make him a French Foreign Legion deserter and have a couple of guys from the Foreign Legion chase after him. Basically, Jean-Claude came up with the whole idea about the sister-in-law who's down on her luck, and he needs to go and participate in these fights to make money for her and her daughter. And then I came up with the French Foreign Legion angle. So now he gave it a little more drama. Now he's on the run, and the Foreign Legion has sent a couple of guys after him.
Lionheart came to be as a result of a contract with Jean-Claude Van Damme. We had done Black Eagle with him, Bloodsport had come out, and he was a growing presence. The picture came about because of his signing the contract with Imperial Entertainment, which included 2 pictures, the first one being Black Eagle and the second one being Lionheart. And actually Lionheart was the picture that made him a star, quote unquote, if you will, in terms of a major studio. When Universal Pictures picked up the picture, signed the picture for release in the United States territory, they really promoted that, and they promoted him, rightly so, and that made him Jean-Claude Van Damme. So they went to work on the screenplay and developed it to the point where it was acceptable, and Sheldon Lettich worked on that, and Van Damme worked on that. He had a position of certain approvals, rightfully so, because he was on a trajectory to become a real presence in the industry.
They wanted to keep the budget way down. They didn't want to hire me at first because I was a member of the Writers Guild. This woman, Stephanie Warren, was not a member of the Writers Guild. She was a friend of Eric's.
The crediting on pictures comes about sometimes as the politics of Hollywood. There's no escaping that.
So I guess Eric told Sunil, we can get her for dirt cheap. She's not a member of the Writers Guild. I'll vouch for her writing. So let's just get her hired to write the screenplay. So she did write a screenplay based on Jean-Claude's story.
The original screenplay for what became known as Lionheart was written by S.N. Warren and her husband, Hugh Corcoran. And with Van Damme's approval and Sheldon Lettich's skills as a writer, they contributed heavily to the motion picture.
Nobody was really happy with the screenplay except Eric. I know Sunil and Ash weren't happy with it. Jean-Claude showed it to me. I told him, I think you really need to toss this in the trash and start from scratch. And so at that point, Jean-Claude went to Sunil and said, hey, look, I can bring in the guy who wrote Rambo 3 and Bloodsport to do a rewrite.
And when it came down to the credits, Sheldon Lettich was in the Writers Guild, and S.N. Warren and Hugh Corcoran had done it as a non-union screenplay. So there was an arbitration over that, and the credited writers on the show are Jean-Claude Van Damme and Sheldon Lettich. And they believe me, it was an arbitration, and we had nothing to do with their decision. But the Writers Guild said those are the writers.
And Sunil at that point said, okay, we'll go Writers Guild, we'll hire this guy. So now Jean-Claude had to convince him to let me direct the movie. Jean-Claude had seen a movie I directed. I directed this little 20-minute short film called Firefight, a story about some Marines in Vietnam on a hilltop being attacked. Jean-Claude at least had a movie he could show to Sunil. He screens this short movie, 20-minute movie in 35 millimeter, and I have to admit it looked pretty damn good for something that I basically cobbled together. So Sunil decided to take a chance on me. That's how I ended up directing Lionheart. I owe Jean-Claude a lot for really going to the mat for me on this one. I actually had faith in him as an actor. I actually believed he could act. We proved it in Lionheart, but he wasn't convinced that Eric would try to bring that out of him. He was convinced Eric would just basically use him the way that he was used in Black Eagle, which is another movie Imperial Entertainment made that Eric directed. So Jean-Claude basically just played the Russian bad guy in Black Eagle. He was also a Russian bad guy in No Retreat, No Surrender. He wasn't really respected for his acting. People felt he would never really move beyond being a karate star. But I did. I had faith in him. And Jean-Claude knew I had faith in him. That's why he wanted me to direct the movie, even though I wasn't nearly as experienced as Eric Carson. We had a heckler at that fight in the underground garage. And my casting director, Jim Tarzia, brought in a number of people. And I wasn't happy with any of them. And we needed somebody who really knew how to be like a New York City asshole.
I could fucking kick this guy's ass. See this shit, man?
I know, baby. I know.
Lawrence Bender called me and said, would you be interested in directing a martial arts movie I'm producing? And I didn't know him, but I said, well, yeah, I'll talk to you about it, sure. So we talked about it and had a good time, and I thought he was a smart man. And it didn't work out, but he was friends with Sheldon Lettich. He'd talked to him, and he was kind of in the mix of Hollywood, so he needed some money. You know, he was flying around, sleeping on couches, and really working to get something going for himself. And so I said, well, do a part in the movie. Sheldon said, yeah, give him the part. And I said, well, what's the part? He said, the part is the asshole.
Get up, pussy!
And I said, great, that's perfect for a producer.
I'm not saying that's what Lawrence was, but he knew the type. And he was an actor also. Lawrence had started out wanting to be an actor. Lawrence and I had gotten to be good friends. I'd met him through Boaz Yakin, who was a friend of his from New York City. And actually, via this introduction, I ended up introducing Boaz to Scott Spiegel. That's how Scott Spiegel met Lawrence Bender. Lawrence ended up producing a very low-budget movie that Scott directed called Night Shift or Night Crew, something like that, about a slasher on the loose in a grocery store when the night crew was in there restocking. Sam Raimi played the butcher. Okay, so Sam was in it. You see how all these connections happened. I had met Quentin Tarantino, who was working for Imperial Entertainment. He was the guy who was calling video stores all over the country and trying to sell them Imperial Entertainment titles. One of my favorite ones was Ninja versus Zombie, was one of their films. And so I met Quentin, and I introduced Quentin to Scotty. When I mentioned Scott Spiegel, like, well, Scott Spiegel, he co-wrote Evil Dead 2. He knew everybody's credit. So that's how Lawrence and Quentin hooked up, was through these connections. So basically it was like networking with a bunch of people. We're all pretty much nobodies at the time. Some of these folks have gone very far. You know, Scott's ended up directing a bunch of movies, and of course Lawrence and Quentin have done a movie or two.
Well, he wasn't a big shot producer at the time, I don't think. Or I don't think he would have been playing that role. But I do remember, honestly, it was years before I made the connection that I realized that, holy cow, I remember him. I remember he was like an extra, practically. He was an extra. I don't think he had a line in our movie, and now he's like this huge producer. And in fact, I have a close girlfriend who was an actress, and now she's a producer. And one time we were having dinner at Soho House. This was maybe a year or two ago. And Lawrence Bender was there with some friends, and I leaned over to her and I said, you know, he played like this cameo in this movie I starred in like years ago. I don't know how many, is it 20, 25, whatever it was. Well, that was 1990, so, oh my God. So anyway, 27 years ago. And she's like, oh, really? Oh, let's go over and say hi to him. So she goes over and he's like, oh, hey, how you doing? Whatever. And then I said, hi, you know, I don't know if you remember me, but I was in that movie Lionheart that you were, and he literally like didn't even respond. He didn't. He literally like looked at me like he didn't know what I was talking about and just changed the subject. And I went, okay, well, that's interesting. I guess he doesn't want anybody talking about his days as an extra in a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Check it out. That, my man, is the lady. And this is her.
There was somebody very famous on the list who had a much bigger name than Deborah. Deborah didn't have any kind of a big name at the time. She had played one of the characters on Dallas, I believe, on the TV show Dallas.
I was interested to do it because, you know, I'd spent 10 years on Dallas playing the good girl, basically, and most of the parts that I got were, I was, you know, just the good girl or whatever. I was pretty much the villain in this piece, and I'd never done that before, so that was interesting to me.
I did not know that Deborah had a reputation for being a good girl, because all I felt from her was bad, bad girl. I'm surprised now to even hear that. I didn't know that. No, she was claws and venom and heat. Yeah, that's how I remember Deborah.
Deborah Renard, very sexy lady. We had a very heated reading for that. A number of women who tried for the picture, and Bing Crosby's granddaughter was one of them. I thought, and she was gorgeous as well. But Deborah Renard had a little edge to her, where she could be a little bit nastier than the rest of them. But the Viper, I want you, right? Get those pants off right now, right? That she had that essence about her. So she had the grace, the charm, and the venom. And she was wonderful in the picture.
All of my costumes were made for me, and there was a lot of discussion about how to make them as sexy as possible. You know, obviously that was the audience that we were appealing to, men that like martial arts movies and action, and you know, they like their women a certain way. So it was fun, and I got to wear 3 different kinds of full-length fur coats: one mink, one sable, and one chinchilla. And they were real, and they were really nice, I have to say. Chinchilla was my favorite. It was the softest.
My relationship with my boss, the beautiful head of this fight ring, was very ambiguous. He was a former fighter for the lovely Deborah Renard, and now they've become somewhat sexually involved. I would say that she had some predatory instincts in her. She used her beauty to her advantage.
My only regrets were that Deborah was her skin was extremely white. Harrison's skin is extremely black. Well, when we had shots, like 2 shots, with the 2 of them, that would make my DP crazy, because he'd have to pour a lot of light on Harrison, but take the light off of Deborah. And there was this whole elaborate setup that he had to do. He would say, please, no more 2 shots of those 2. But there are 2 shots of them in the movie. They all work just fine. You can see them both very clearly, but it was a nightmare for the DP.
Come on, man, you're not part of that damn airport is from here. Hey, come on, man, it's just me and you.
What impressed me about Harrison, we've got the room where all the actors sit before they do their auditions, and everybody's sitting up on their chairs. Harrison came dressed kind of like a bum. He basically looked like some down-and-out wino who happened to wander into the audition, but he's doing this purposely. He was getting into character. And Harrison was not sitting in a chair. Harrison was on the floor. He's just sitting on the floor, just kind of laid out there. Anyways, we brought him in, and he did his audition. We were just very impressed with the amount of passion that he brought to the role in that audition. And in particular, I think one of the lines he had to say in the audition was, you got a lot of heart, Lionheart, or something like that. He was, like pounding on his chest. He was just totally into it. He totally became the character.
Here's where you want to go, L.A., right?
Yeah, can you take me there?
Damn straight, baby.
When?
That totally depends upon you, my man. We just got to go see some people, you know what I'm saying?
I had no input on it, but I got some sense of what this character was. This character reminded me of people that I had known in the past. Some guys that I knew on Central Avenue when I first moved to Los Angeles, but mostly my father was the inspiration for that character. My dad, who was a musician in New York in the 40s and the 50s, and as a matter of fact, recorded some songs in New York. So he had this thing where he would talk to you and he'd stutter. He said, hey, man. When I first met him, I only met him twice in my life, and that's too bad. But we did talk once. He wanted to settle with me about why he left and what was the deal with me and my mother and why he never saw me again. So he confessed a lot of things to me. And we sat down, we had a drink. And I remember distinctly, man, how he talked. He would say, I just want to explain this to you, you know what I'm saying? And he had a gold tooth. And he said, look here, it wasn't my fault, man. I had to get out of the South. You know what I'm saying? They were lynching people. And I asked your mother to go with me. She couldn't go because her mother wouldn't let her go. And my mother at the time was 17 years old. So my grandmother said, there ain't no way you are leaving. And you ain't taking that. And I was in utero at the time. And you ain't taking that baby with you. So, but my dad talked that way, and he behaved that way, and he was, New York. He was a New York guy. Lived on the rooftops and stuff in New York, and he was always like going, hey, look here, hey. So a lot of that came from him, and he would say, look here, you know what I'm saying? I said, no, I don't know what you're saying because you haven't said anything. but he was a fun guy to copy. That's where I got it from. We shot in Los Angeles, and they really did some good work in terms of making it look like it was New York. We had scenes where there were a crowd of people, like we were on any street in New York, bumping into them and the whole thing and saying, get out of the way, man, get out of the way. Hey. All that New York stuff. And I think, after seeing the film, I thought, damn, that looks like New York. But it's downtown LA.
We actually had a pretty substantial schedule. Nowadays, when you look at the schedules for low-budget movies, we had a luxurious schedule by comparison. We had 39 days, and we shot most of the movie in and around Los Angeles. We shot a lot of stuff in downtown LA. The swimming pool was at some mansion in Malibu. We shot the Foreign Legion scenes in Las Vegas, just outside of Las Vegas actually, June Dry Lake.
So I discovered Vegas, I discovered the desert. I came from Belgium. First time I was sitting and I heard the silence. The silence has a silence type of frequency. It's amazing.
I did a lot of scouting to find these locations, especially the Foreign Legion location, because we needed a really desolate area, no buildings around, but we had to have some kind of accommodations nearby where the cast and crew could stay. We scouted all of Southern California, and finally we just realized, let's try Vegas, because at least there's hotels and facilities nearby. So we ended up doing a week just outside of Las Vegas at June Dry Lake. They built that Foreign Legion camp. There's one other scene where we see Leon, after he's escaped in the desert, he comes to the ocean. We shot that at what's called Guadalupe Dunes. Guadalupe Dunes is probably about a hour north of Santa Barbara. And there's actually these vast sand dunes with nothing on them. There's no buildings or anything around. And the Pacific Ocean comes right up to them. Coincidentally, that's where Cecil B. DeMille shot the original silent 10 Commandments. Some movie archaeologists have been doing some excavations there, and they've actually dug up the sets.
The production of the movie went smoothly. There was no major disruptions in one direction or major unusual achievements in the other. The achievements across the board were good to excellent, depending on the day, and every day on a movie set there can be problems, unforeseen forces, unforeseen consequences of decisions that were made. I would say the picture was smooth and the spirits were high, and the expectation of the picture, because of the effort being put into it, was very high in terms of every fight was done the best it could be done at that time. The characters were into their parts and they were fulfilling their roles. The picture was structured properly, and there were discussions about the ending and so on. But overall, it was a very smooth production.
I felt very proud of the finished film. What really made a difference in how we all felt about the film was when we sat down and watched it with an audience. Audiences just loved the movie. And one thing that's very hard to get an audience to do, it's hard to get them to cry. Now you can get them to laugh, we all know that dying is easy, comedy is hard. Well, getting an audience to cry, getting tears in a movie, that's even harder than comedy, as far as I know. And people were crying at the end when Joshua shows some remorse at the end, and he's, hey, those are some real tears. We didn't use any tricks to get those tears. Those tears are really flowing, and people cry when they see that scene. And people cry at the end when Leon comes back and reunites with his friends and his family.
The end analysis was that the picture was good, really good. And we had a screening, a special test screening. We did it at Universal Pictures at the Public Theater, Odeon Theaters, and it was about 8 o'clock. And they did the cards, they did the focus groups, they did everything. I was out in the lobby with the Universal executives who were there because they had heard that the picture was good. It had been screening around at the various studios because it was an independent film looking for a negative pickup in the U.S., and we believed we were going to get one and we were going to get a good one. And so the expectation was there. And that night it delivered because the executives were saying, oh, the cards are good. This is good. The audience reaction was excellent toward the picture. And it wasn't just a martial arts audience. there was enough of that in there, because if you're going to test a dance movie, you get people who like romances and dance movies and so on and so forth. So there was the audience was correct for that picture. The reaction was terrific, and the picture was positive. Yeah, I think for the money we had to spend, for the time we had to do it, it was a number 10 on the Whammo-meter.
This dude's gonna kill your ass, man.
Here's one point where we knew we had the audience. During the final fight, the audience that's watching the fight starts clapping, rhythmically clapping. Well, people in the audience in the theater would start clapping along also. So that doesn't happen unless they're really into the movie. So we knew we really had a crowd pleaser here.
I was in a movie house in the Valley, I believe it was Woodland Hills, the day that it was in theaters here. I went in, I snuck in, while everybody was seated in the dark. I snuck in, sat in the back, and watched the film. And all those people were, at that time, even that's 1990, 91, somewhere along there, they sat there, and I watched them watch this movie. And they were reacting to all that they saw. They were reacting to the emotionality of it. They cheered for Jean-Claude Van Damme's work. They cheered for me. They cheered for everybody. And I sat there through the entire film. And when the film was over, I tried to get out of the theater before anybody saw me. And I got about halfway to the parking lot, and they burst out of there, and two guys went, "There he is! There's that guy! There he is! Hey, 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 hey!" And everybody that came out of the theater would say, "Where? What are you talking about?" I said, "There's Joshua right there!" And they all came towards me. I said, "Oh God, I got to get out of here," And I tried to I didn't want to hurt their feelings by running from them. I don't like doing that. So I got to the car and I opened the door. I said, "Yeah, hey, how you doing, man? I gotta go. I got someplace I gotta be. But I'm glad you love the film. Thank you very much," and got out of there. But it was an interesting experience because I'd never in my life had an experience like that before.
I actually think the first time I saw the whole movie, I've been seeing some little clips going into the editing, with when Sheldon would invite me over to watch some clips, was when it was playing on Hollywood Boulevard. Wait, I must have gone to some kind of premiere. Oh my gosh, I don't even remember if there was a premiere. I don't remember a premiere. I remember going with a girlfriend, and it was playing, this is funny, it was playing on Hollywood Boulevard Theater, and it was probably like a Friday or Saturday night or something, and it was a very vocal audience, very vocal. So in these fight scenes and stuff, I mean, they were like rooting and all this stuff, and then with my character, they're booing me. And literally at the end of the movie, I remember like slinking down my seat and looking around and being like, okay, I think I'm just gonna try to exit this movie theater without anyone attacking me, which was interesting to me. I didn't think that would happen. I didn't think I'd have that reaction. It's not that I seriously thought my life was in danger or something, but they were so into it. They really hated my character at the end. And I was really like, okay, I think I'll just kind of hide a little as I walk out of the movie theater just in case.
The expectation was good, and I think it was positive and excellent for what was available to do it. When the movie was released, the audience responded all over the world. Sheldon and Jean-Claude were in Paris when the movie opened there, long before it opened here. And they said, "Do you want the good news or the better news?" Because their response there on the Champs-Élysées and the theaters, the crowds were ecstatic. They loved Van Damme to begin with anyway, but it was very positive.
The movie opened foreign before it opened in the U.S. And it was received extremely well. The first country that it opened in, I believe, was France, because Jean-Claude and I actually went to France for the opening. We went to Paris. The French distributor, Sami Hadida, Metropolitan Film Export, they bought the film for France. they brought us over there. So we're planning to have a little party at a famous restaurant in Paris called La Coupole. So Jean-Claude and Sammy and a few other people are at La Coupole. And Michelle and I, we saw the movie advertised on a few marquees of theaters in Paris. It was called Full Contact in Paris, by the way. Sammy liked, he liked a more macho kind of a title, and in fact the ads in France were great. They would talk about Full Contact, and rather than, Lionheart was too wimpy, Wrong Bet was too wimpy for Sammy. Anyways, Michelle and I say, look, while you guys are taking your seats here, let's get in the car and go back to the theater and see how the movie's doing. So we get to the theater just as an usher is coming out, and he's saying, Full Contact Complete. In other words, it was sold out. Every seat in the house was filled. They couldn't, so they stopped selling tickets. It was sold out. We go back and we tell everybody at La Coupole. We had a big celebration over that. And what was interesting too was it opened on the same day that Steven Seagal's movie Above the Law opened in Paris. So we're checking out some of the theaters, and there was a big one on the Champs-Élysées that had it had 3 screens. And so we go check it out, and we notice that Full Contact is on one of the smaller screens, and Nico is on the big screen downstairs. And Jean-Claude's grousing about this. Hey, how come they put Seagal on the big screen and we get the small screen? Anyways, the next day, they had switched screens. Not because of what Jean-Claude said, but because Full Contact was selling out, and Nico had a much smaller crowd in the audience. So that was a good sign that we did something right. And people, and we sat in, we watched the movie with audiences, and audiences were loving the movie, clapping along and laughing, crying. So it worked out well. We were all quite proud of the movie.
Being in Germany was an emotional experience for me because I sat in the house watching those people watch the movie. And again, I got emotional. Oliver Krekel, the guy who was doing the Blu-ray for us, invited us to Germany, paid the way, fed us, did everything for us, put us up in a nice hotel. That's something I'd never done before. I realized over there how much they love American product. How into it, not just going like, yeah, it's fun watching you guys on the screen. They get into it, man. They're like connected to that stuff. And we saw all kinds of people, autographs like crazy. I mean, I signed autographs all day long one day. So it was wonderful just to have that experience with them. And like I said, they loved the work.
Golly, I know that I remember being in a theater full of people, so it must have been a cast and crew screening. They didn't have a big red carpet premiere. Saw the movie, saw it as a great success because it is a beautiful story about the downtrodden trying to make it with what tools God gave him. Subterfuge, rising above it, helping out a small child. These are beautiful things that make human behavior something attractive to look at. When characters strives for more, reaches deeper, lends a helping hand. I was touched by all those things when I saw the movie.
Fans love Lionheart because it is sincere. It has a relationship, brotherhood, friendship, love. Betrayal, and this is great, and it was done on a very high-class way because it happened to me in real life.
There is a threshold of value in terms of the production that makes it a real movie. It doesn't look like a knockoff cheap movie. A limited budget picture, yes. A low budgeted picture, yes. But it does reach the threshold of being a real Hollywood picture. And Van Damme's presence in it as an emerging star, and the production value of the movie, the score, all of the elements that go into making a good movie are present in Lionheart. No question about it. You can debate this and that and the other thing, but basically it's solid. So when people go looking for real movies that have real martial arts in them, or real great fight scenes in them, they're going to seek out, the list of Van Damme. And Lionheart, the poster's on the wall there, Lionheart has been at the top of that list. It sells continuously and has for years and will continue to. You move from being a really good movie into a classic. That's the only difference. And it's still a good movie. It's still a good story. Why do people watch Casablanca over and over again? If I'm tripping through the channels and Casablanca's on, I can't leave. I have to sit and watch it because Curtiz's direction is so incredible, and the performances and the issues and so on. And the issues are there. Let's put it this way. These movies are more than just 90 minutes long. They have values. They try and teach. They try and present issues and point of view of the issues. It's not just, you killed my brother, I'm going to kill you. 90 minutes of chasing and fighting, That's, I think, what some of the problem is today is the repetition. You're always asking the question, have I seen this movie before? Well, there are other movies that were similar to Lionheart, no question, in terms of the fights and so on and so forth. But it was a unique picture with a unique story. So, have you seen this movie before? No. It's like the movie I'm involved with now. Have you ever seen this movie before? No, you never have seen this movie before. And that's, for the time, that's what these pictures have: production value and an essence of being about something other than 90 minutes long.
One thing that I said when we were making the movie, or before we made the movie, was I don't want this to be, and actually Jean-Claude felt the same way, we don't want this to be a typical kick-ass action movie. Like basically Bloodsport ends when the tournament ends and he wins the tournament. That's the end of the movie. This is not going to be like a revenge movie where they kill my brother, now I kill all of them. We wanted it to be something different. We wanted it to be more of a tender-hearted, dramatic film, as well as have the fights, and that's what we made. Now with our next movie, Double Impact, we went 180 degrees in the opposite direction. It's basically all about, hey, they killed my parents, we're going to kill every last one of them, and basically Double Impact, which is just as popular, if not even more popular. We had Jean-Claude playing twin brothers. It certainly got more action, more ass kicking, and it's got boat chases and things blowing up. There's not a single explosion in Lionheart, so it's very atypical. It's a very atypical action movie for that time period, especially. Nothing blows up. There's not a single helicopter boat chase, a motorcycle chase. We've got none of that stuff. It's all drama, and it's all these cool fights. They don't blur into one another. You can remember each one of the fights distinctively in Lionheart. Some of the action films I've seen lately, there's just nondescript bad guys coming from every direction, getting their asses kicked, but you can't tell one from the other. There's no personality except the main bad guy and his henchmen. All right, I got those two guys. I know who they are, but I don't know who anybody else is. Whereas in Lionheart, we had distinctive personalities to each one of the people that Jean-Claude fights with. Each one's got a different look, a different vibe, a different personality, and you remember them. The pool fight, instantly know. The pool fight, different than in any other fight. The moves are different. Paco's doing the capoeira moves. The fight with Abdel at the end with Attila, it's different than the other fights. It's basically punch, 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 gets his ass kicked, and then wrong bet, and now he's doing all the famous Van Damme kicks and knocking this guy into the stands. We didn't do that in any of the other fights. So these are some of the elements that make the movie so memorable and make people still want to watch it to this very day.
At that time, I thought I was not in enough good shape, because I was not training. It was lots of hours and on the schedule, and I'm not a big guy from nature, so I melt easily. I've got to be in the gym like at least 3 times a week to keep the way I am right now. If not, it's melting, right? So I've got to train all the time. So at that time, I thought, oh, physically, I'm not like a Lionheart. So when I saw the movie a couple of days ago, I was in great shape. So everything else was fine. And I was surprised that people were crying watching that movie. We touch lots of ladies' hearts, and I'm looking for doing something as good. Thank God I've got a second cycle of clientele of fans, because I've got the people, they've seen Lionheart at 25, they are now 50, 55 years old, and then I've got the young customers, young fans from the JCVJ, the John Van Johnson, and all those TV shows and the stuff I'm doing now. At Lionheart will have a chance to resuscitate in terms of 2 generations, the one now and the one then. And father and son will be able to appreciate something that the father was venting years ago. Finally, oh, you know the guy I told you, the Steve McQueen guy, the Bronson guy, the Van Damme guy? Yeah. No, let's go see that movie. It will match the essence and the taste of today, but also he will bring the epic and the old-fashioned feeling of the old time. That's my mission with Lionheart 2, with great real fighters, great actors, and it's going to be great. I love you guys, all my fans for all those years, and I'm not so good with compliments, but anyway, it's going to be a great year. I'll do the old wave and down, ready in you. Okay, see you guys.